There were 400 people in that studio, but when that man walked onto the stage, only one woman saw the face that had saved her life. The cameras were rolling. The lights were warm and golden, casting their familiar glow across Oprah's iconic stage. A woman named Catherine sat on the curved couch, her hands folded in her lap, telling the story of the darkest night of her life, and the stranger who pulled her back from the edge. She was 50 years old now, a licensed psychologist, a mother of 3, a woman who had dedicated the last 2 decades to standing on bridges and talking strangers out of jumping, just as someone had once done for her. But the man who saved her life? She never saw him again. She never learned his name. She never got to tell him what his 3 hours of patience had created. Until today. Because what Oprah was about to reveal would close a circle that had been open for 25 years. And it would prove that sometimes a single conversation can echo through generations. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. 25 years ago, Catherine was 25 years old and ready to die. She had lost everything in the span of 6 months. Her mother to cancer, her fiancé to another woman, her job to budget cuts, her apartment to eviction. She had no family left, no friends who answered her calls, no reason she could find to keep breathing. On a cold November night, she drove to the Millbrook Bridge, a notorious spot where 17 people had ended their lives over the previous decade. She parked her car, walked to the middle of the bridge, and climbed over the railing. She stood on the narrow ledge, her fingers gripping the cold metal behind her, looking down at the black water 200 feet below. The wind was bitter, the night was silent, and Catherine felt, for the first time in months, something like peace. This would be easy, she thought. 1 step forward, 1 second of falling, and then nothing. No more pain, no more loneliness, no more waking up every morning and wondering why she bothered. She was about to let go when she heard a voice. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" Catherine turned her head. A man was standing on the bridge, maybe 15 feet away. He was in his 30s, wearing a simple jacket, hands in his pockets. He wasn't rushing toward her. He wasn't screaming for her to stop. He was just standing there, looking at the sky. "The stars are incredible tonight," he continued, his voice calm and conversational. "I come here sometimes just to look at them. City lights make it hard to see them anywhere else." Catherine didn't respond. Her fingers tightened on the railing. The man took a small step closer, not toward her, toward the railing beside her, on the safe side. He leaned against it casually, like they were old friends having a chat. "I'm Michael, by the way," he said. "What's your name?" She didn't want to answer. She wanted him to leave so she could finish what she came to do. But something in his voice, the gentleness of it, the complete absence of panic, made her speak. "Catherine." "Catherine," he repeated, like the name meant something. "That's a beautiful name. My grandmother was named Catherine. She made the best apple pie I've ever tasted. Used to sneak me extra slices when my mom wasn't looking." He kept talking, about his grandmother, about apple pie, about the constellations above them, and how his father used to point them out during camping trips. He talked about ordinary things, mundane things, things that had nothing to do with the ledge she was standing on, or the water below. And Catherine listened. She didn't know why. She should have jumped. She should have ended it while she had the courage. But his voice was like a rope, and without realizing it, she was holding on. For 3 hours, Michael talked to her on that bridge. He never once told her not to jump. He never lectured her about how much she had to live for. He never made her feel stupid or weak or broken. He just talked. And eventually, he asked questions. About her mother, about her fiancé, about the job she lost and the apartment she couldn't afford. And Catherine found herself answering, the words pouring out like water from a broken dam. At some point, she couldn't remember exactly when, she had climbed back over the railing. She was sitting on the cold concrete of the bridge, her back against the metal bars, and Michael was sitting beside her. Still talking, still listening, still there. When the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Michael stood up and offered her his hand. "There's a diner about a mile from here," he said. "Best pancakes in the state. Can I buy you breakfast?" Catherine took his hand. They walked to the diner together. He bought her pancakes and coffee, and they talked for another hour. When they finally left, he gave her a card with a phone number on it, a crisis hotline, and made her promise to call it. "You're going to be okay, Catherine," he said, his eyes meeting hers with absolute certainty. "I don't know how I know that, but I do. You're going to be okay." And then he walked away. She never saw him again. Oprah had tears in her eyes before Catherine even finished the story. "He saved your life," Oprah said softly. "A complete stranger stood on that bridge for 3 hours and talked you back from the edge." Catherine nodded, her own eyes glistening. "I've never forgotten him, not for a single day. I've looked for him for 25 years. I've searched social media, hired private investigators, posted on forums. Nothing. It's like he appeared out of nowhere and then vanished." "Why was it so important to find him?" Oprah asked. Catherine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. "Because I needed him to know what he created." She took a deep breath. "After that night, I went to therapy. I got help. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I went back to school, got my psychology degree, and dedicated my career to suicide prevention." She paused, fighting back tears. "I've stood on 14 different bridges over the past 20 years. I've talked to 47 people who were ready to jump, 47 people who are alive today because I did for them what Michael did for me." The audience gasped. Some people were already crying. Oprah leaned forward, visibly moved. She understood this kind of purpose, the way trauma could transform into mission, the way our darkest moments could become the light we offer others. "How do you do it?" Oprah asked. "How do you stand on those bridges, knowing what it feels like to be on the other side?" "Because I remember," Catherine said simply. "I remember how alone I felt. I remember thinking that nobody cared, that nobody would even notice if I was gone. And I remember how it felt when a stranger proved me wrong." She wiped her eyes. "Every time I talk someone back from the edge, I'm paying forward what Michael gave me. Every life I save is really his save. I'm just the messenger." "I have 3 children now," Catherine continued. "A daughter who just got into medical school, a son who teaches elementary school, another son who's about to become a father himself." Her voice broke completely. None of them would exist if Michael hadn't stopped that night. None of those 47 people would be alive. Their children, their grandchildren. Hundreds of lives that exist because one man talked to a stranger for 3 hours. Oprah reached across and took Catherine's hand. "And you've never been able to thank him." "Never. And it haunts me. I need him to know that his 3 hours mattered. I need him to understand the ripple effect of what he did. I need him to see what his kindness created." Oprah smiled, that knowing smile that meant something extraordinary was about to happen. "Catherine, what if I told you that your search is over? What happens next will change everything. Share this story now." Catherine froze. "What do you mean?" "Our producers have been searching for months. We found hospital records, old phone registries, even surveillance footage from that diner you mentioned. And last week, we found him." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Her whole body began to shake. "He's here, Catherine. He's been waiting backstage for the last hour, watching your interview. He knows who you are. He remembers that night." Oprah paused, her own voice thick with emotion. "And he's been waiting 25 years to see what happened to the woman on the bridge." Catherine couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Oprah turned toward the stage entrance. "Michael, would you please come out?" The man who walked onto that stage was in his early 60s now. Gray hair, gentle eyes, a nervous smile. But the moment Catherine saw his face, she knew 25. Years had passed, but she would have recognized him anywhere. She was on her feet before she realized she was moving. She crossed the stage in 3 steps and threw herself into his arms with a force that nearly knocked him over. "You came back," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You came back." Michael held her tightly, his own tears falling freely. "I never left," he whispered. "I've thought about you every single day. I've wondered if you made it. I've prayed you were okay." They held each other for a long moment, 2 strangers who had shared the most important 3 hours of their lives, finally reunited. When they finally separated, Catherine looked at him with 25 years of gratitude pouring out of her eyes. "I need you to know something," she said, her voice shaking. "I need you to understand what you did." She told him about the 47 people, about the 3 children, about the grandchild on the way, about the 14 bridges and the hundreds of lives that rippled out from that single November night. Michael listened, his face transforming from disbelief to wonder to something that looked like awe. "I was just talking," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know what I was doing. I saw you, and I couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave you there alone." "Why?" Catherine asked. "Why did you stop? Why did you stay?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "Because 12 years before that night, I was standing on a different bridge, and somebody stopped for me." He wiped his eyes. "A woman I never met before. She talked to me for 2 hours until I climbed back over. I never saw her again. I never got to thank her. But I promised myself that if I ever saw someone else on a ledge, I would do what she did for me." The studio erupted. The audience was on their feet, sobbing, applauding, holding each other. The revelation had transformed an already powerful story into something cosmic, a chain of salvation stretching back through decades. Stranger saving, stranger saving, stranger. Oprah was crying openly now. "Do you understand what this means? Somewhere out there, a woman stopped for you. You stopped for Catherine. Catherine stopped for 47 people. Each of them might stop for someone else someday. One act of kindness, echoing through generations." She turned to both of them, her voice breaking. "This is what it means to be human. This is why we keep going. Because we never know when 3 hours of our time might create 100 lifetimes." Michael took Catherine's hand. "I've carried guilt for 25 years, he admitted. "I always wondered if I should have done more. Taken you to the hospital, made sure you were okay. I was afraid I'd failed you." Catherine squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Failed me? Michael, you gave me everything. You gave me my children, my career, my life." She turned to face him fully. "And because of you, I've given that gift to 47 other people. You didn't save one life that night. You saved hundreds." Michael broke completely. 25 years of wondering, 25 years of hoping, 25 years of not knowing. All of it released in a single moment of understanding. They embraced again, and this time the audience didn't just stand. They roared. A standing ovation that shook the studio walls, a celebration of human connection at its most profound. 8 months later, Oprah received a photograph. Catherine and Michael standing together at a bridge dedication ceremony. The Millbrook Bridge had been renamed Hope Bridge and now featured emergency phones and crisis counselors on call 24 hours a day. On the back of the photograph, Catherine had written, "We've saved 11 more people since the show aired. The chain keeps growing. Thank you for helping us find each other. Tucked inside the envelope was a birth announcement. Catherine's grandson had been born. His name was Michael. Oprah placed both photographs on her shelf because television was never about the lights or the cameras. It was about this: a stranger who stopped, a conversation that saved a life, and the ripple effect that proved one moment of kindness can echo forever. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Some angels don't have wings. They have patience. They have time. They have 3 hours on a cold November night and the courage to simply be present. That's the legacy of that afternoon. A bridge that became a symbol of hope. 2 strangers who became family, and a chain of salvation that will never stop growing. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is not walk away. For Michael, for Catherine, for the 47, and for everyone still waiting for a stranger to stop. Someone will. Someone always does.